While my favorite works from Junji Ito tend to be his longer works like Tomie, Gyo, and especially Uzumaki, he does write a huge quantity of short stories, and honestly, he can come up with so many different plots, and it's just impressive how many of them are deeply interesting. I feel like some of these short stories deserve a little bit of love, so I'm going to take a moment and outline my top 10 favorite Junji Ito short stories. My number 10 is found published in Shiver, and that is Long Dream, or something like that. Basically, this follows a patient who is admitted into the hospital to be monitored while he sleeps. The reason being is that he claims that he is experiencing a long time when he's dreaming at night. When he's admitted, he says that every dream he has feels like days. And this can be a problem when you're getting to nightmares and things that you don't want to get stuck in for what seems like days. As the story goes on, his dreams last even longer until it becomes an actual real problem. I really like this short story just because I think anything with sleep is terrifying to me, but also I just love the subjectivity of time and how time passes when you're asleep. So I thought that that was a very interesting idea and just loved it, and that's why it's my number 10. My number 9 is found in Smashed, and that is Earthbound. So it's a story, and if you've read it before, where like all the humans take the position kind of like this, and they don't move for days. And you don't know exactly why they just feel tied to that geographical location and why all of them are taking the same posture. We have a woman who's working as a volunteer, closely looking over these cases and trying to see how she can help out. And she sees people get into this earthbound position that are increasingly close to her until she eventually, by the end of the story, discovers the cause for these people being attached in the position that they are in. The posturing is creepy, the reason behind it is interesting, and as far as like a quick short story, it's something that definitely left me satisfied. Number 8 is also found in Smashed, and that is Blood-Sucking Darkness. This is the very first story that appears in this compilation, and I just think it's so atmospheric, and the visuals and the story are really cool. It follows a girl who has developed an eating disorder, and she's wanting to lose weight. She's anorexic. And she meets a boy who says that he also wants to diet with her because, I don't know, he cares about her or whatever. That's not really the main point. And over time, she realizes she's not actually losing the weight that she would expect to, until she discovers that she actually is being fed blood by bats. And the bats kind of consider her one of their own, and it gets creepy and visual, and it's just really cool and a really strong start to the Smash compilation, and definitely worth being acknowledged at the very least. Number 7 is found in Fragments of Horror, and that is Blackbird, which is just, the lady in this one is definitely one of the creepiest visuals that I've seen across all of Junji Ito's short stories. The main idea is that we have this young adult man who is found after like a hiking accident, and he's brought to the hospital. Later we discover that after he had his hiking accident, he was kept alive by a woman who would fly to him looking like a bird and feed him raw meat. The weird part about this, though, is that she continues coming to him at night even after he is in that position to where he's in the hospital, he's in normal places, he doesn't need the sustenance anymore, he doesn't need her help anymore, but she keeps coming. To discover that the meat that she's feeding him is actually something a little bit closer to home is very scary, creepy, and where she's been getting it is even creepier. So just the whole visual of that and the whole thoughts of that and just everything surrounding that story is super creepy for me and definitely worth the read. Number 6 is a very famous short story by Junji Ito. Generally, when people haven't read very much Junji Ito yet, they have read this one, and that is The Enigma of Amigara Fault. This is found in many locations. I know it's also in Fragments of Horror as well if you want to see it there, but you can find it lots of places. And it follows an earthquake that occurs, and when this earthquake goes, it uncovers a bunch of human-shaped holes. Holes that look exactly like very specific humans. This is publicized through the news, on TV. Everyone's kind of seeing this really interesting view of human-shaped holes, and they're recognizing these holes as looking like they are shaped for them specifically. Not just any random human, but a hole in the shape of me. And people get really obsessed by this idea that there is a shape out there that exactly fits their frame, so they go and they seek out these holes, and those that get really obsessed with the idea end up going down them. We don't really know what's happening down them, and it's just kind of eerie and spooky and like something was meant for you, but at the same time also very dangerous and weird. It's a cool idea, and I definitely think that I'm also really into this idea, even though I don't rank it way at the bottom. There are stories I like better, but this one, it's really interesting. I like the idea of like a hole shaped by my frame. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Number 5 is a really short story, and I honestly think it's probably one that I rank a lot higher than other people, but I just loved the imagery and viewing what happens in this story. It's just really exciting to me, and that is The Whispering Woman. I think that one also is in Fragments of Horror towards the back, and basically we follow a rich man's daughter, and his daughter is unable to make any decisions for herself. She is like paralyzed over the slightest decision she has to make in her life, even if you're talking about like one shirt versus the other. So he has to hire help to basically stand by his daughter as an attendant every day and tell her what to do so she doesn't get paralyzed by decisions. This woman comes and applies, gets the job, and becomes very, very attached to the girl. The girl seems to be doing really well under her thumb, under her guidance to make decisions. And when the connection gets even stronger than we ever expect it will, it gets creepier, and this attendant really does have all the decision-making power in this young girl's life, and I just think that's fascinating. I don't know, kind of like the someone else going and doing everything for you, through you. It's a really interesting idea to me, and to me that one stuck a lot closer than a lot of the other stories, and I just love the imagery of when the attendant is kind of like lurking over the little girl's shoulder. I don't know. I really like that one. Number 4 is a namesake for Smashed, so Smashed, and basically in this short story, we have this man who comes up with this pot of nectar that he gets from a culture in South America, brings it back and starts sharing it with some friends. It tastes like nectar of the gods. It is delicious. They really enjoy it, but the catch is if they get caught, so to speak, eating the nectar, crazy things happen. They get smashed. That's why it's the name. But the reason I like this one so much is it's such a simple idea, and it's just such a weird idea, but it allows Junji Ito to show off a lot of his cool artwork. And it has a lot of interesting visuals just because the concept's so simple and you get to see it come across time and time again, person after person. Sometimes like the simplicity of some stories is actually better than the really complicated ones when you have it accompanied with artwork that is just really engaging and great. I also really like the namesake for Shiver, which is Shiver. And basically this is the one where if you look on the cover, like there's that guy riddled with holes. And there is our main character. He notices that his neighbor has a bunch of holes in her arm. He also remembers that his grandfather, when he passed away, was riddled with holes all over his body, and they don't really know the connection for what has caused that, but they do know it has happened to several people. They end up digging up some World War II diaries and discovering that there is like this object that is like this green jade beetle looking thing, and that is connected to our mystery of the holes riddled throughout the entire body. It was really interesting. I really liked the looking into family history and digging up some type of lore, and it's kind of cool. So I like that one too. Number 2 for me is Marionette Mansion, and this follows a family that have worked traditionally with puppets over the years, very poor, but they've traveled around the country doing puppet shows. The dad does teach both of his sons about puppets and about how they work, and towards the beginning of the story, the dad kind of tells his son, like, we put the emotions into the puppets. We make the puppets come alive. And one of his sons kind of questions that and says, I think it's them that sort of control us. Like, we are doing what the puppets want us to do. later in life, this son grows up. He ends up, through a couple of different strokes of luck, having a mansion where he and his entire family are strung up in this mansion and treated like puppets themselves. So it kind of does that spin on that. I just think it's really, I mean, I think that there's kind of a pattern here. When you think of me really liking this, the Whispering Woman story, and then this one too, just the story of giving yourself up to complete control and what that can do. That's very horrifying and interesting to me. So I really loved them just giving themselves up to be like puppets in their mansion. It was really cool. So that was number 2 for me. Number 1, honestly, I think it's just number 1 for me because of how visually appealing it is to me. This is also in Shiver. I just really liked all the short stories in Shiver, so that one's showing up a lot in my list. But it's the blimps, the hanging blimps. So we start the story when a teen idol takes her life, and everyone kind of wonders why, and they're just stressed about it. And then later on, you see her head going through the sky, like a big giant version of her head, and people are kind of wondering what the heck is going on. They finally get like video footage of it, prove that it's a real thing. And then over time, we start seeing more hovering heads throughout the entire skies. They match the heads of people, of real life people. And so people start seeing their own. Later, they find out that at the bottom of all these heads is like this rope that has a noose at the end. And your floating head that has your face is going after you and trying to kill you. People start dying a lot and people start hunkering away, but it's hard to stay in your house and hunker away forever, especially when there's things you need, necessities like food and water. So it's just really engaging to see the visualization of like this crazy apocalyptic tale of floating heads. It's just really creative and just shows how creative Junji Ito can be, and I really feel like there's not that many limits to what he can come up with. So very engaging. I loved it. I really do appreciate all of his short stories, and that's kind of why I did this list. So this was just kind of meant to be a quick list. I would love to hear your favorites as well. There are so many great stories that he has come up with throughout his entire time as a manga artist. I'd also like to recommend my guide to Junji Ito, where I talk about all his published works that are in English, that I will put right here. See you later.